Welcome to the second episode of the Thinking Tech podcast. um, I'm your host, Thomas Fortul, and it's my pleasure to introduce Sacha Gucciardo, who is a data analytics consultant at Slalom, previously at Bombardier, that's correct, and you hold as well a master's degree from HEC and HEC Montréal and Erasmus as well in business intelligence. Welcome, Sasha.
Thank you so much for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, thanks.
It's been a long time coming. Without Sasha, there probably wouldn't be a Thinking Tech podcast. He also has his own podcast, AI with Sash. More on that later, but great to have you on.
Thanks, man.
So I'm excited to get into the conversation, right? Talk about AI, talk about data, all that stuff. But first, I think it's important we know a little bit more about you as well. So if you could tell me just a bit about what your work and what it encompasses right now.
Yeah, for sure. As you said, I was at Bombardier previously. I was a data engineer, so everything around how to get proper and good data into one place. Right now, the big focus for most companies is having one centralized data cloud, like data, either cloud or data lake house, whatever you want to call it. And that kind of showed me how important data is for any kind of model. Like that's like the baseline, right? You want to have great data, clean data in one place to be able to build on your models. So that was my stepping stone to going to Slalom, which is a consulting firm specialized in tech. So we do everything around data, AI, cloud, Salesforce, and obviously some strategy, but we're really focused on building solution for the client with the clients and making sure that we deliver like something like amazing, like a great product. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm working on delivering an AI agent for a client at the moment, which is pretty hot this year as well. Um, yeah, so that's a little bit about my work. I'm from Europe, I think year two, right? Then I moved to Canada about 3 years ago now. It's been great, honestly. Like I moved for many reasons, but one of them was, the tech environment in Montreal. I think is developing, and that's something that I want to push forwards as well. And you mentioned my podcast. That's something that I'm trying to do on my podcast is democratizing access to information around AI. And I'm so glad that you're doing the same, because we need conversations and we need people, talking about how they're doing stuff and why they're doing stuff. So I'm so glad that you started your podcast too.
For sure, for sure. So we've been in Montreal like more or less the same amount of time. I came 3.5, 4 years ago. So
Nice.
yeah. Although I didn't come for necessarily the tech part. I came for the biochemistry first, but now I guess came for the bio, stayed for the tech.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's cool doing the slalom. It's very much hands-on, and you actually get to work on the projects with the client and see it evolve, actually see it being implemented. Probably very rewarding. But we were talking about skiing earlier. What's something you do like apart from work on your own time?
Okay. I mean, compared to what I'm used to in Belgium, it's not as cold, but in Canada, I try to ski as much as I can. I grew up skiing, so I love that. But in winter, it's either skating, skiing, hiking, everything outdoors. I like being outdoors because I'm very much on the computer all the time. So when I get a chance, I try to go outdoors as much as I can.
Yeah, I can very much relate to that for sure. And it's tough during the winter though, because I mean it's just so cold. Sometimes you don't want to go outside.
Yeah.
And you just gotta force yourself. But I think you put like 2, 3 layers on. If you're moving, like you don't really need to put too much on. But no, that's great. And what's something maybe that you love to do that most people would probably find like unconventional or be like, oh.
Yeah. Back in Europe, I used to paraglide. So
Oh
I
wow.
was, I started like in 2018 or 2019. Did a few flights, with someone, and then I decided that I wanted to fly by myself. So did a few trainings here and there, and then I was flying back then. One of my most memorable flights was in close to the Mont Blanc in France, and I was paragliding and I could see the Mont Blanc, which is pretty unique. Yeah, through the clouds and everything. That was really cool.
And that was you yourself, like
Yeah,
just you.
yeah,
Damn.
that's pretty cool.
How long is the certification for that? I mean, how do you?
Honestly, you don't. I mean, at least
Because
in Europe, you don't
some
need
kind
to
of
be
training,
certified. You can just honestly, if you wanted to, you could buy your own paraglide
and
and
then just
start
go.
flying. But obviously, most sensible people wouldn't do that. Like they would first start with training a little bit and then flying. But you don't need to get certified.
That's great. How did you get into that? I mean,
And one of my friend at the time was hyped about it, and I was like, all right, let's go. Like, that's my mentality for most things like that I do. Honestly, I just say let's try it, and then if I like it, I keep
yeah.
doing it.
But now it seems like you're all into to AI and data. What got you into looking into that? You're talking about business intelligence before, and then seeing that data is the most important or a very important part in all the business. Could you tell me more about what got you into? Is there any like specific moment or like a mentor that
Yeah,
inspired you?
yeah. Um, Again, many different reasons, but one of them I think that was for me the catalyst is probably my one of my teachers in during my master's. I really liked him. He taught me about text mining, so like the really NLP and the foundation of like all these Gen AI tools that you see nowadays. I really liked the course. It was pretty deep and detailed. I enjoyed it, and then I just kept going from there. Honestly, it's one thing after the other, and then you had ChatGPT, and then wanting to understand how that works as well, and one thing led to the other, and then started my podcast, got me more like deeper into it, and then my current job got me even deeper into it. So um, yeah, just about the story behind
That's
that.
good. That's good. I mean,
Yeah,
you have a varied background, right? You went from kind of a business background, and then I guess in Bombardier, you started to look into the tech because you were originally like in project management in Bombardier.
yeah,
Then you started looking into data engineering power, and then so on and so forth.
yeah, exactly. My bachelor was actually business, and
Yeah,
that's really funny, right? Because I don't come from like a very technical, and most people do when they land into AI. Most people come from software engineering or data science, computer science,
yeah.
all these kind of backgrounds. I started with business, so very broad. It's a very broad bachelor, honestly, like program, and then I didn't really like that, so I went to well during my bachelor we had a few courses on information system, data, etc., etc. I like that. That's what piqued my interest at first.
Yeah,
If we go back a few more years, and then I did my first master's, as you mentioned, at Erasmus in Rotterdam, which was business information management. So that was about bridging the gap between business teams and data teams, more technical teams. So how do you talk, the business language um, with the technical teams, and how do you talk the technical language, and how do you translate that to the business teams? That was really cool. I really like that, and I think maybe we'll have more questions on that, but that's something that's super important. I think being able to translate, because there's still nowadays there's still like a big gap between those teams. Sometimes they don't know how to talk to each other, um, and then during that first masters, I um, had a course that was neural networks. Like we were learning about those, and I really liked it, and that's why I did my data science masters here. I should say also because I really like Montreal. I wanted to come back. Um, so yeah, that's more
nice.
about
Because you've done your exchange here, right?
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, cool.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, I fully agree. There's a gap between when you see like the technical teams. Because me, I work. I mean, I'm studying the computer science major, and
Hmm.
you talk to a lot of the students, and sometimes they're so focused on the tech, you come to hackathons, you look
Hmm.
at how they present projects, and there's a big gap between the actual tech they develop and then the way they present it or communicate it. Because I think the essence really comes from the way you communicate it.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I think a lot of people can make products and develop software with pretty limited technical knowledge,
Yeah.
given the tools that we have and all that. So yeah, what's like one of the gaps you mentioned between business and tech? What for you is like the most important thing we have to solve between those two domains?
Yeah, I think education, honestly, most of the business people that I talk to, especially right in this current job that I have at Salam, being a consultant is talking to a lot of people, and most of them are business people, and have a very, preconceived notion of what AI is and what AI can do and solve for them. And sometimes it seems like to them AI is like magic, like it can just do anything, right?
Yeah.
And so
I mean, it's a big buzzword as well. They
yeah,
toss it around. It's a solution to everything.
yeah. So education, I think, everyone needs to educate themselves on what AI actually is, because it's definitely not magic. Although it can feel like it, like when you use ChatGPT and these things, like it's very magical.
Mm-hmm.
But educating what AI is, understanding, its limitations and the misconceptions around AI is like something that's very, very important. Um, and yeah, I think that's a big part that I'm looking to also kind of fill, right? Like I think this gap is going to become less and less big. Um, yeah, that's
No,
about it.
I fully agree. I think education is where you join the two sectors. It's something I tutor a lot of math, and I think being a teacher really helps you, you know, get those concepts across. And I
Yeah,
think education is the basis of almost like
I agree.
almost anything. Essentially, all the skills you learn is just how you teach yourself those skills.
1,000%.
And learning AI and learning all those new technologies coming out, it's a new skill that has to be properly taught. I think in higher education, it's something that is probably lacking. It's something that we're working on a separate project, um, trying to get the educational sector really up to date with all the new AI trends. And
Hmm.
it's a slow moving sector. It's a lot of regulations, and so I think it's a shame that people don't get to get the education they usually deserve. Hence, also the podcast
Yeah,
to try to get that word out. So
it's a slow moving sector, although the technology is moving so fast,
yeah.
which is something that we need, to do. We need to do something about that. And I think that the future, that's one thing that I'm really positive about and really looking forward to, is that I think that the next wave of business leaders are actually going to be needing to understand AI like really precisely. So I think that's the next wave of like successful business leaders. They'll have a great and deep understanding of AI, rather than just understanding or thinking that they understand what it
Hmm.
is.
Do you think we need to do something about the education? Because we're talking about having it being a slow moving sector compared to.
Hmm.
I don't think AI is going to slow down anytime. If anything, probably going to speed up with the rate of how things are improving in software, hardware,
Hmm.
um, and also just the implementation of it. Is education, like higher education, gonna be able to keep up? Do we need a different model? Like, how do you think is gonna look in the future?
Um, that's such a tricky questions. I think,
Because we're sitting in McGill University
yeah.
right now. Like, what's McGill gonna be in 10, 20 years
Hmm.
if they can't keep up with this? Yeah.
I think like education as it is today, and I'm talking about universities. I think they're not ready to be replaced yet. I think it's still instrumental in, for if we're looking at the society level. I do think that they will need to include more, you know, courses on AI in every programs. I think that's like a must. I think the universities that do so more like earlier on will be more successful in the future. However, are universities going to be replaced? I doubt it. Um, and because there is a social aspect to going to university, you get to meet people, you get to sit with your peers. It's more than just learning; it's also an experience that you get, right? And if we actually lose sight of who we are, we're still like very social species. Like, we like to talk to people, get to see them, look them in the eyes, and if we lose that, I think it's going to be very tricky for the society. So I hope that universities don't go away because it's key.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they do need to adapt to some extent for sure. Yeah.
No, of course. I see a similar kind of vision going.
Sorry about that.
No, it's cool. No worries. But what's something in, because we're talking about the future here. It's
Yeah.
difficult to see, of course, what's going to happen. Like predict, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can only kind of guess. But what's something you think that won't change in the next like 10 years? You're mentioning the social aspect of us as humans, right? Biologically, we're just a social species. It's important to remember we're sometimes just like apes on a rock, right? But what's something you see maybe in the tech sector or more generally in society that's not going to change in the future?
Mm-hmm. That's an amazing question. Honestly, if I had the answer, I would probably be a billionaire right now. And actually, I'm saying that because one of the best thing that I've heard from a business person, and it came from Jeff Bezos. Actually, he was saying that most businesses try to see what's going to change in the next 10 years and try to capitalize on that.
Yeah.
And he's actually looking at what's not changing, or he tries to understand what's not going to change in the next 10 years and capitalize on that. So I think that's an amazing question. What's not going to change, or maybe that not so much, is that we're going to stay human. We're still going to be, waking up in the morning, needing to eat, needing to drink, and needing to learn if we want to survive. Um, that's my answer, honestly, because it seems to be moving so fast. Like, you see those changes in the tech sector. It's like you see the rate of progress like rapidly increasing. You can't really predict these things. I think that's my take. At least I wouldn't give any predictions.
I actually got that question looking at what Jeff Bezos was saying, and it might have been the same talk or the same something he had said around that topic. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's an interesting way to think about things because we're always talking about what's going to be, what's the new thing, what's the next tech in 10, 20 years. You don't really think about what hasn't changed.
Yeah.
But I think
What
having
do you think is not going to change? I'm
what's not
curious.
going to change.
Yeah.
Uh, Specifically, I don't know. I would say something about our innate, beings and the fact that relationships matter a lot.
Yeah.
Your network effects and just the people that you know. I think um, the more like starting up my career and just working on this on the professional side of things, you
Hmm.
see that relationships are such a big part of
Yeah.
what people do and how things are actually done.
Hmm.
That that's something that's not going to change in those non-technical skills, soft skills as they call them. I think that's going to stay important
Hmm.
for as long as possible, just because we're as much as we might be coming into a virtual world and we might all be avatars at some point. I still think that there's some human social connection aspect, and that is always going to be crucial.
Yeah.
So
And it's going to become even more important, I think.
I
Like
think so
you're
too.
talking about those soft skills that are going to be necessary. I think they're going to become even more important in the future, right? Like, I give one example. I think if you look at the output of, a query from ChatGPT, you need to be able to say, is that accurate? Like, does that make sense? Like, and use your critical thinking. So that's one of the soft skills that is going to become increasingly important in the future. Um,
Yeah, I think
yeah.
critical thinking and I see might go off on a tangent here, but like it's kind of an issue nowadays with you see statistics on university students not reading as much, almost never writing. Now that we can just also ask ChatGPT to write any email,
Yeah.
any form of text, and I think it's gonna have long-term effects on people and just the workforce in general, because you're gonna have a lot of workers that don't know how to write, how to read, almost, and more importantly, that's gonna affect how they think, because writing is really just an expression of or practicing your thinking and getting your ideas in a well thought out manner, speaking as well, and so what I see as becoming an issue in the future is that skill deteriorating due to all these tech, taking it over for us. So
Agree.
I think education is one way to solve that, and yeah, I think education is the basis for a lot of the solutions as
100%.
we see them into the
Yeah.
future.
100%. You get that right.
All right, part two of the episode. What do you think, given how pertinent these technologies are, infiltrating our daily lives and everything, and your work in data, do you see any issues in ethics? And if you talk about the fairness of all these new technologies, the way you implement them in your businesses, I mean, with the AI agent project you're currently working on, what's like something you keep in mind, the ethical vision?
Yeah. Yeah, 1,000%. Very important. I think actually to answer that question, I make a huge detour.
Go
If
for
I
it, man.
say that,
Go
but
for it.
I think there's four things that I've realized that's really important and not really
You can take it if you want.
and not really that people don't think a lot about. I think AI is 1,000% inevitable. So I think AI, there's nothing about the future of AI that we can't stop. Like the train is well on its way, and I think there's no way of stopping that, right? So
Whether you hop on or you don't.
exactly. So either you catch the train or you just don't take it. Um, there's one thing. I gave a workshop, I think it was this week, like on Tuesday, and most people, because I did a little exercise to see, okay, what do you guys think about AI? What's AI, right? It seems like most people think that AI is recent, um, but it dates back like 1950s. I think the first time it was kind of introduced by Turing, right? AI in its really largest form is mimicking, trying to having machines trying to mimic human intelligence, and I think that's where we and that's a big statement, and I might get backlash on that, but I think that's maybe where we went wrong. Um, we don't even know how humans really think, right? In the first place, we don't understand how the brain works 100%. So trying to mimic something that we don't even understand is really interesting. I think AI is probably can be optimized in a different way and can be even better than if we kind of switch from or try to go away from that mimicking. Um, and to your point, maybe when we do that, we can start investigating stuff that we're not doing right now. And I think that we're not investing enough in understanding like the social impacts that AI has. I think that's one thing that a lot of people talk about the good side of AI, and we tend to forget that there is always like a darker side, and maybe we should also focus on that a little bit more. See like the impacts it has, and for some extent it's clear, right? You want to make sure that you avoid biases, and a way to do that is having a team that's very diverse. But yeah, I think we should still try to understand a lot more social impacts that this technology can have. I think that's crucial for us, and people even imagine AI taking over. I'm not sure if it's going to happen or not, but if it does, then maybe we want to make sure that we know why, or like when and how it's going to happen.
Yeah, because we're
uh,
making a machine that's based on human intelligence, but we don't even know how to think ourselves, like how we think,
yeah.
and then we can get into like AGI and the future of even artificial super intelligence and so on. But
Mhm.
no, that's a very interesting point because even here, I'm doing research at the neuro.
Yeah.
It's like the McGill no Montreal Neurological Institute, and there's a few labs I think that do one researcher Blake Richards, which does research on that, trying to think about artificial intelligence from the lens of a uh, neurobiologist and really from that neural aspect, that neural perspective,
Hmm.
trying to mimic the brain, but also considering that there's some things we don't understand, which I think is fair to assume we don't fully know how our brain works.
Hmm.
Otherwise, the neuro research wouldn't really have a point. Um, but that it's like a very interesting point because it's going back to first principles and like where we first think about what AI is.
Hmm.
And I think now AI is termed AI, but it's really generative AI and that those models that mimic humans in terms of creating new outputs and not just the previous forms where we're just you know be predictive or anything that's not generative.
And even on like democracy and stuff like that, that's really research that I'd love to see and to read about. Like I think AI is definitely going to have some sort of impact on the society, but at like even a deeper level, like on the democratic, you know, like values and how we operate and how we vote for people
Like
and
on the
how we,
politics side of
yeah,
things.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, it was used by Barack Obama back in, I don't even know when it was, like 2008 probably he was first
Hmm.
elected, something like that. And he used a lot of data to make sure that he would target the right people, right? That's some sort of ML model behind that. Um, so even back then,
That's
right,
an interesting
they were
take, but
using that.
how is it going to affect politics and
Yeah, that side, like that side is probably also under researched and probably also underfunded, and you know um, but I do know that Mila has a lot of people looking into like these things and ethics in general, but we should be more focused on that, I think, and be overly uh, like conservative on that side, I think. But that's my take, though. Maybe I'm.
yeah, I mean, we so easily give all our information to these models, and because in some sense, right, the value that you get back from it, whether or not you use certain AI models, and if you personalize it as best as possible by giving as much information, that's where you get the best results. But then in the long term, you don't know where that information is going as
Mm-hmm.
well. You talk about data security,
Mm-hmm.
the ethics behind sharing your own private sensitive information. What's going to happen in like 5 years with that? We don't really know. Like no one can tell.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something as well about being conservative with your current actions, but then not reaping the benefits of the technology or saying, oh, like fuck it, I'm just gonna look at the best value I can get now, and then who knows what's gonna happen after.
Yeah, I think that exactly what you just mentioned is, you have a point here that we need to be careful about the long term game rather than just the short term benefits. I think that's really something that we need to be careful about, right? Because where do we stand in 10 years doing that? And
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see that. Like, we'll see in 10 years where we at.
Well, it's interesting because even here in the library, you just see all these students using ChatGPT for
Yeah.
everything, and there's a certain ethical consideration behind that. Even we're doing research as well on like ethics of AI by student use, the effects on that on the classroom, and how teachers can respond.
Hmm.
I think that's another very interesting topic, and um, there's a big issue with like class engagement people not really going to class now that a lot of lectures are recorded sometimes, and people use ChatGPT as their teacher. A lot of plagiarism as well. End up doing the work. Like, what are the ethical impacts of that? Also very interesting, but not always the most lucrative sector, the ethical one. And but it's starting to be talked about more and more often. There was the summit, the one in France, I believe, in Paris, and there was quite a bit of talk on like the ethical impacts of AI usage, energy as well.
Yeah.
How much energy is used per prompt, and training the data centers. It's another big question. Sustainability of the models.
Yeah. You're making me think of, like, Canada is standing on a lot of energy. Could be even using that as well to its advantage. I feel like we're underutilizing our assets here in Canada. We have so much energy
I agree.
we're standing on. We could be training those models, and I think one way, like one way for Canada to go about this is being the provider of energy. I think we need to be more proactive on that end as well if we want to stand a chance to be looked at, in the AI sector, in the AI, it's like an AI hub, as they want to be in Montreal. I mean, just Canada itself, like, it has tremendous.
I think there's tremendous potential. I'm not a politician or anything or economist, but I don't know, from what you hear about.
Oh, is that the radiator?
I think it's the heater or something.
Heater turned on.
It's cool in Next AI. You see like the whiteboards. They have a bunch of whiteboards.
Yeah,
and it's super like startup, like Silicon Valley. They've got like
nice.
Okay, arrow all the way up, 10x the revenue and all that shit. It's it makes you feel like you're in I don't know, White C Combinator or something.
Oh, that's dope though. But see, we need more of that too. More of like things like that provide access to like startups, and like incentives for people to create their own things. That's amazing. That's really cool because they have their own. They offer offices, right, for those people.
They're like a shared office, and then you have meeting rooms kind of scattered everywhere. But usually it's just like an open office.
Okay,
it's kind of scattered.
That's really cool.
But it's nice.
Yeah. You also get to network with people that do similar stuff, right? So that's amazing.
I was watching a video yesterday on it was an old video, but it was on the NVIDIA offices and how they were designed. And
NVIDIA offices?
NVIDIA, yeah. And they were talking about, well, it's a huge space. It's like mega, two huge buildings.
Yeah.
And just talk about the way they designed it, but the most important thing was like the open office area, and the way that there weren't many closed spaces. It was just everyone could always see each other, always talk, and apparently like it's part of the way they innovate and iterate so fast. It's just like that social connection aspect. They thought it was key. So
that's really cool. It's the same thing as Slalom. Slalom is like it's like one level, one floor, and then you have just a bunch of tables, and you don't have like a predefined desk, and you just sit wherever you want, and it's very open, which is amazing. You just go and talk to people, and there's no like hierarchy, right? You can talk to the director, he's sitting next to you, or like your manager, and I think that's a cool way to like, because the environment tells you a lot about the culture of the company as well, right? Like if you have something that's very closed as an environment, I think your mind is going to mimic that environment for sure. So if you have an open environment, definitely like people will become more open and start talking, together. And when you start talking together, then you start exchanging ideas, and then you can build up, and so.
Yeah, because I think there's so many things you can. The human connection is the essence of like essentially everything, but without that, you can't find out the little interest somebody has, like know more about the person, because there's a certain sense of rapport, right? Without that, you don't a lot of projects wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Like if you
100%.
hadn't told me maybe you're interested in skiing and maybe I know somebody that's skiing, then make that connection.
For
But
sure.
if I look you up on Google, I don't see that you're like a skier or something,
Yeah.
right? So then that would never happen. So there's just certain things that I think also comes back to like nonverbal.
Yeah.
Uh,
100%. I think it comes down to tacit knowledge, like stuff that you don't perhaps like write down somewhere in your resume.
yeah,
There's a lot of stuff that we share while talking, but we don't necessarily just write down or capture as data points, right?
yeah.
And maybe we should try it. I mean, that's a big problem for a lot of companies too, right? Like, how do you make sure that those employees that are leaving the company share their tacit knowledge about their current job and position? That's a huge problem too, right? Because people leave with massive amount of experience and then it's just lost. And then you have someone new that comes in and
You have to
have
train
to
them.
relearn everything.
Yeah.
Information. Everything is about information, actually. Pretty interesting.
I think we're heading into a future of mass information, even more than we have now with like AI, like before with the internet, but now with AI generated content. And so what's going to be key is the curation of the information, not necessarily the creation, but like the quality and the value behind that. And that's when you're going to have a lot of uh, necessity for, you know, people to stand out, to have credibility in there. And it's going to be ever more important, right, to have, like that personal brand, to be an expert in that field.
Yeah.
And to know that, you can go to this person and you have real, like, curated knowledge.
Yeah.
Out of all of the massive information. Just a few couple last questions for our guest here, Sacha. What's next for Sacha in the next couple years, couple months? What plans you got in the future?
What's next? For me, what's next is keep working on all these little AI projects. I want to be more productive this year, and do more work with people that I like, that are around me. Building my network, building projects and solutions with my network is really what I'm focused on right now. So that's what's gonna be next. And in the next 5 years, definitely a company coming out of everything at some point. Yeah.
Hell yeah. And if you could invite yourself to your podcast, but yourself older of 5 years, what questions would you ask him? Or let's say you had maybe a couple questions. What would you ask him?
I would ask myself, did you stick with it? Because I think consistency is definitely the most important thing. And I've learned over the years, I had a tendency to quit way too early what I was doing. And I got to keep working on the stuff that I'm passionate about and not quit too early. So that would be the first question. Like, did you keep going at it? And do you have any regrets? That would be the two questions that I would ask myself.
And where can we find your work? Where do we find what you're up to? What's the best place to contact you?
Definitely LinkedIn is the most representative of my work. So reach out on LinkedIn, Sacha Gucciardo, and then AI with Sash for my podcast. Thank you so much for having me today, Thomas. It was a really good discussion. I really enjoyed it.
It was a roller coaster of an episode, but I'm sure we made it. Thank you for the conversation.